The first three plays of Saturday night's overtime show you amazing growth from Keyonte George, but also where that ceiling might actually be really high. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. For today's show, we're going to look at the first three plays of overtime, and it will show you the incredible growth that Keyonte George is having, what these big moments mean to him. Then we will look at the Utah Jazz reinstituting the pick and roll as not only a part of the offense, but a heavy dose of it in a major coaching move that took place on Saturday. Taylor Hendricks makes his debut. How did he look along the way? Will Hardy put a line in the sand about a week ago in Portland. The Jazz are 3-2 since then. Some things are dramatically different. And Simone, Fontechhio, and Omer Yurtseven are largely responsible for that. So we're touching on all of those things today on this Monday edition of Locked on Jazz. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. As I mentioned, thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen, and thank you to all the everydayers out there that join us each and every day. All you have sent me your Spotify Wrap. That's amazing. Please keep hitting me on X on that, DLock09, or wherever you might want to send me. If you're off that platform, I understand. Feel free. I'd love to see your raps from Spotify. That's super cool. And I'm really appreciative of all you everydayers that are out there. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any new $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The final three plays, or the first three plays of the overtime win, which was super fun, against Portland, tell me what I need to know. By the way, you guys think you matter? I think we're 6-4 at home now. Is that right? 6-4 at home, 1-9 on the road. Altitude matters, but I think Jazz fans matter. Like, incredible environment. Fans are always into it. Makes it a great place to play. And the Jazz are 6-4 at home. Denver's 9-0. Altitude matters. But 6-4 for us, pretty great. 1-9 on the road. It's one of the biggest differentials of anyone in the league. All right. So first play of overtime, the Blazers are doing something they don't do very often, which is they're playing their rookie Kamara, who's 6'8 and long and defensive-minded, and Matisse Thybulle together. So they don't usually do this. Now, partially it's because Jeremy Grant's out and Anthony Simons, but this is not a lineup that Portland usually uses. And so they now have their two defensive stoppers on the floor at the same time. And Kamara is 6'8 and long, and he is engulfing Keyonte. So the first part of this is that he handles this. That's actually wildly important. The second one is let's walk through the three-play sequence with some great detail. So on the first one, it's a pin down for Colin Sexton on the left side, and the play doesn't materialize. Colin doesn't get off the pick very well. Colin comes out. He's not really open, and Keyonte doesn't force the pass to him. So we don't throw a terrible turnover that's a fast break the other way on the opening play of overtime. That's very easily what could have happened. Colin comes to get it. Then Colin tries to go somewhere, doesn't really get anything. And Colin calls for Keyonte to come back for a handoff. And now Keyonte takes a left-hand drive, his preferred height is right, gets low and turns the corner. The coaching staff, Will Hardy said it well the other day in a press conference, I want Keyonte to actually pass and shoot on every possession. It's a hard job. Tongue in cheek, but they are. But one of the things that I've talked to some of the coaches about is the next step, and the thing they want from Keyonte is they want him to turn the corner more. He's coming up the pick and roll too many times and just kind of hovering out there. And they want him to turn the corner more and really tax the defense. Now, we'll get to pick and roll in a second. But we don't run a huge amount until the other night. So Keyonte comes off it with a left-hand drive, and he ends up missing the shot. Okay, like that's a super hard shot for him right now. Keyonte is not a particularly good rim finisher. He was not a good rim finisher at Baylor. He was not a particularly good transition athlete at Baylor. Some of that talk is that he was heavier, but it's something he doesn't do great. So he's trying to learn how to finish somewhere in the range. And if you look at his shot chart coming into the game the other night, he's shooting far better from 3 than from 2 in the recent time. And coming into the game the other night, in the previous 5 games, he was shooting 39% from 3 and 31% overall. So he's shooting about 20% from 2. In fact, I actually have that number. Keyonte in the was 3 of his last 15 on 2s and 6 of his last 25 on 2s coming into the game the other night. So he misses a 2. Okay, that's not. The next play is Portland goes down and he gets beat on a UCLA cut by Shaedon Sharpe for a dunk. Okay, so the open of overtime, this 20-year-old kid has now missed a shot and gotten beat. How does he react? So the first one, you saw him take coaching with a left-hand drive. Second one is he's now been beat. He's not, statistically, by the way, he's still not good defensively. That's fine. He's a rookie. I don't expect him to be. No one should expect him to be. So now it's a left sideline. High pick. Omer comes up, sets the pick above the timeline. So super high. Ayton's in drop below the 3-point line. He drives in he's on his left hand, not his preferred hand, and he curls it out. Doesn't get in too deep, doesn't force it, doesn't get into the turnover zone that we see, frankly, THT and Colin get into a great deal. And he pulls and he brings it back out, swings it to Colin, and Colin resets him. The other thing that's interesting is how much this team's willing to just give him the ball right now. Like they understand his role, what he means. That's an interesting development here. So then he calls for a small pick and roll with Fontechhio. And it's a clear side. And this was a coaching adjustment that the Jazz coaching staff made where they ran almost all their pick and roll. They ran so much pick and roll. We'll get into that in a minute. But they ran their pick and roll the other night with a clear side. In other words, the empty corner, empty side pick and roll. It means that the help guy can't come in and off that side and bother. All the help's got to come from the weak side, 3 guys over. I'm a huge fan of empty side pick and roll. You can run it from a lot of different angles at a lot of different spots. It's easier read for the guard. It was a nice adjustment by the coaching staff. He gets the switch. Sharpe was the pigeon that night. Pigeon's the guy you shoot after. James Harden is like Sharpe is their pigeon. When they have Kamara and they have Thibault on the floor, the 2 pigeons, frankly, are Sharpe and Ayton. Ayton is big and tall, but he's not particularly good in the pick and roll defensively. So he gets the switch. He swings it to Fontechhio. Fontechhio, super smart, sees that Sharpe's and gives it back to Keyonte. So you got teamwork going on here. You got guys giving up themselves. You got a lot of fun stuff going on here for the Jazz. And he gets a right-hand drive, which is on Sharpe. Sharpe should never have let him get to the right hand. And he drives and he lowers his left shoulder and forearm into the chest of Sharpe, bends him off, and he hits about a 5-6 foot floater. Okay, what was he on 2s coming in? He was 3 of his last 15 and 6 of his last 25. That's what a lot of those 2s were prior to that shot, was Keyonte driving with this kind of running and fading away shot that he tried to kiss off the glass in an impossible angle. This time, he goes to a strong hand, right-handed, puts his left shoulder into the defender, and takes the contact and scores it. So at 6'4", 185, and I think he'll end up at 6'4", like 195 with strength and power, that's really important. He's willing to play with contact. He's willing to play with that physicality. He hadn't been playing. He'd been fading off on that shot, trying to take the floater. He went to the free throw line a ton the other night. That's, I think he ended up taking 10 free throws as a youngster the other night. Huge steps in development and where he can be wildly successful. Third play, right side floor this time, high pick and roll with Yurtseven again, above the 3-point line. He's coming to his left hand, which is not his strength. We've talked about that. His right hand's a little better. On the left side of the floor, this is good work by Will Hardy and his coaching staff. There's a pin down going down, so players are occupied. DeAndre Ayton, who was in drop earlier, remember earlier when when Keyonte does the pick and roll with Yurtseven, but the play doesn't happen. But I mentioned that Ayton's in drop above the three-point line, kind of shading over. I'm guessing that Keyonte saw that. He pulled out, he curled out, he didn't have the play, but he took that information in because on this play, he comes around with his left hand. Ayton comes over too far on drop, and Kamara doesn't switch. Portland screws up. Portland's not sure what they're doing, which was not uncommon in the final 5 minutes. Portland comes over. Ayton comes over. Kamara doesn't switch. Beautiful right hand bounce pass off the dribble, Yurtseven dunk. So in these 3 plays, we have him in overtime doing what the coaches have asked him to do, which is learning and turning the corner and pick and roll. It doesn't work, but he does it. We have him getting beat badly on an embarrassing dunk and bouncing back. We have him setting himself up on a matchup with the pigeon, understanding that that's there. Teammates recognize him as well as he did. Fontechhio deserves great credit. Taking and playing with physical prowess and strength at 6'4", at 20 years old, scoring. And we have him reading a previous play, understanding what he's probably going to get on this play, reading it perfectly, and hitting Yurtseven for a dunk. That 3-play sequence shows you the growth, the development, and the ceiling of Keyonte George. It's kind of awesome. We're just getting started. It is Locked on Jazz. Thanks so much for tuning in today and making it your first listen. Coming up, what was that horn and why did it happen? If you know about that, I'll share it with you. If you don't, I'll let you know. Will Hardy and his coaching staff made a major coaching adjustment to who we are and how we play the other night, and it worked, and it was pretty interesting to see. We'll dig into that, and plus Will Hardy put a line in the sand back in Portland. How has the team reacted to that? We're talking about all those things as we're just getting started on today's edition of Locked on Jazz, Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai lineup of cars, it's pretty awesome. You started off with, let's start with the four-wheel drive cars so that you're ready for a little bit of the snow. You've got the Palisade, which is the big SUV, which is just absolutely gorgeous and magnificent. And then you've got it running down to the Santa Fe, the Tucson, and the Kona, all of which look fabulous right now, all of which have great 0% deals. Sign and drive right now. The Palisade does as well. And then 2 more four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive cars are the Ioniq 6, which is the first ever all-electric World Car of the Year, and the Ioniq 5, which I drove through the snowstorm coming back from the game the other night. Those are all available at Murdoch Hyundai. We want to give you the VIP treatment, so if you're going to head by and look at Murdoch and look at Hyundai, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that I can get you that VIP meeting and make sure that you get the treatment you deserve over at Murdoch Hyundai. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Jase Medical. That's Jase. I know we'd all love to escape from the crazy realities of real life, but let's be prepared if life happens. Pharmacies may be running out of certain antibiotics in the middle of a flu season. Which really antibiotics and flu, those are 2 different thoughts. Sorry. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling though than having something and having the supply chain come back to bite you when you need to get somebody someone you love an antibiotic. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. The stuff could happen to any of us. Visit Jase Medical, Jase Medical, and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never more important than to be prepared than today. So go to Jase Medical, Jase Medical, to get 20% off or $20 off on your offer code Locked On, to get $20 off on your code Locked On at Jase Medical. Thanks so much for making Locked On your first listen, Locked On Jazz, your first listen today. I love our Monday lineup. If you're an NFL fan, Locked On NFL, Kevin Oestreicher goes through the 3 biggest stories of the week. If you're an NBA fan, Jackson Gatlin goes through the 3 biggest stories of the week for everybody. Plus, there's always Locked On Sports Today, which is all the news, like why the Mariners make the trade, what's the college football playoff, like great stream today on all that. All right. So we have not played pick and roll this year. Only Denver who Jamal Murray's been hurt and Jokic is their fulcrum, have played less pick and roll than we have all season long. In fact, if you would like the exact numbers, we run 59 picks a night now. Denver runs 49, 50. And the high of the league is Chicago, who runs 84. The league average is about 66 picks a game. The median team is 66 picks a game. So we were running 16 picks fewer than anyone's. Well, this might make sense because our two guards are Taylor Horton-Tucker and and Keyonte George. And if you ran the numbers on like the 67 players that have run 200 pick and rolls this year, I think Keyonte going to the game tonight ranked 63rd and Taylor ranked 64th out of 67. Something right around there. Shaden Sharp was actually interesting in there. Paulo's worse than the NBA right now. So this is not there's a reason why we don't run pick and roll. We don't really have pick and roll guards. Keyonte is the closest to it of anyone who's kind of probably got that pick and roll aspect to him. If you think of Colin and Taylor and Jordan, who were the guards we knew were going to get playing time when the year started, and even Chris Dunn, they're not particularly good pick and roll guards. So Will built an offense that's much more spread out, trying to drive and kick and bend defense that way, where I think 7th in the league in drives. That's what we do. And then when you have Jordan and Lowry, you run off-ball screens, and I think I happen to have this on the backside of the screen. We're 6th in the league in off-ball screens. Okay, so that's who we are. We're not, well, no Lowry and no Jordan. I literally was with one of our coaches before the game. I was like, I don't mean to be a jerk, but like, what do you do for offense tonight? Like, how do you build an offensive game plan tonight with no Lowry and no Jordan and no Kelly? Our offensive rating coming into the game was an 80 when those three were off the floor in the 0 percentile. And what do you do? Because the two guards you have to run pick and roll rank 63rd and 64th out of it. Well, and add to that Portland, I'm doing this a little bit off the top of my head, is like in the 80th percentile defending pick and roll ball handlers. They're in like the 7th percentile guarding the pick and roll man. So if you can take advantage of 8, and that'd be good. And if you get Sharp involved, that'd be good. Well, we went pick and roll bananas the other night. The Jazz ran 91 pick and rolls the other night. It's the 17th most of any team in any game all year. Let me try to put this in perspective. The other night in Minnesota, we ran the 3rd most pick and rolls we've run in any game all year. So we're obviously adding this in with Keyonte. And we ran 71. We ran 20 more than we've ever run. We're not running them at any great efficiency rate, but it's clearly, without Lowry and without Jordan, what we have. We had only gone over 60 pick and rolls 5 times before last week. And then we went over 60 against New Orleans. We went over 70 with Minnesota. We went over 90 overtime, but we went over 90 with Portland. I mean, we've had games this year where we ran 40 pick and rolls. Early in the year, we were running, if you go back to our earliest games in the year, we ran 50, 52, 48, 43 pick and rolls. We just didn't run pick and roll at all. It was not how this team was built to start this year and to play. This is high level coaching, adjusting to the roster you have on that given night, and then instituting new stuff on the fly. Pretty impressive. And it was Keyonte predominantly. Keyonte ran pick and roll with Walker. He ran pick and roll with Yurtseven, and he ran pick and roll with, who was the third that he ran a bunch? Maybe John Collins. So there was a lot of work done by the Jazz and by the coaching staff with trying to get, different lineups. He ran 16 with Yurtseven, 14 with Walker, and 10 with John Collins. And then some smalls. We saw the Fontechhio small late. And honestly, the numbers weren't like wildly great or awesome or efficient, but they were the best option you had. And they show a pretty good flexibility and adjustment level from the coaching staff of what they're willing to do on a given night. And I thought that was really impressive. There were not a lot of lineups the other night that were going to be able to give the Jazz a great deal of answers. And for the Jazz to be able to kind of do that, I thought was pretty cool. All right, we go back to in Portland on Felt like a that felt like a weekend. On Wednesday, so now 10 days ago. And since then, we beat New Orleans twice. We lose in Memphis, lose in Minnesota, and win at home. So we're 3-2 in that stretch. And that's the day where before the game, Will Hardy says, basically, if you don't pass and you don't play hard, you don't play for the Utah Jazz. And he also, after the game, says, hey, if you're going to wear a Utah Jazz jersey, you better give about the Utah Jazz. And he puts a serious line in the sand of who he's willing to be as a coach, what he's willing to have happen, and how we're going to play. Before that day, we were 29th in the league defensively. Since that day, 5 games, we're 3-2. I'm not like the world. We're not going to go win 50 games because of this. But there is clearly something's been established. We're the 3rd best defensive team in the NBA since then. Cleveland, Portland, and Minnesota are all better. Or about the same. Minnesota's tied. We played New Orleans twice, once without Zion. We played Memphis and Portland, 2 of the worst offensive teams in the league. Okay, it's a little bit of a small sample size. But frankly, when we were playing those teams before, we were 28th and 29th in the league defensively. So this is a clear change in who we are as a basketball team. Offensively, we're having a really, really hard time scoring. I mean, a really hard time. Without Lowry and without Jordan, it's hard, right? You go back to the game before, Portland was the 23rd worst performance of any team in the league. We had a 95. We seen the Lakers. Then we played Portland, and we were in the 29th percentile of all offenses. Then we played the Pelicans, we were in the 20th percentile of all offenses. Then we went to Memphis, we were in the 6th percentile. And then against Minnesota, we were in the 3rd percentile, and was the 12th worst offensive performance by any team in the league on any day. For us to be 5th in the league defensively in the same time period that without Jordan, without Lowry, and then the last time without, which is not surprising that you take your 2 best offensive players off the floor and you can't score. I mean, we take about 90 shots a night. They're 40% of our shots, Lowry and Jordan. Like that's a big blow. And that's what we run our offense through. And that's where we made this incredible pivot the other night to pick and roll that we don't usually play. For you to not have those 2 things and then have the offense change out of that, that's pretty good. I mean, last time we played Portland, we turned the ball over 25% of the time, which was the worst of any team in any game all season. And this time we brought it back together. So it's great progress. Simone, Fontechhio, Omer, Yurtseven are a large part of that. And we'll talk about those guys coming up. And then we'll go back to our Monday we used to do this thing every Monday where we looked at like the last 2 weeks of the NBA and see where everybody is. We'll do that as well on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I hope you got into the action this weekend and had a great time. But if you did not, then it's a super time for you to be able to be a new customer and get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 of bonus bets if your team wins. Right now, just get a winning moneyline bet. And the NFL is heating up with some fun stuff. The NBA is wild. The in-season tournament starts tonight. For the first time ever, which is really, I find exciting. I don't know if I'm just totally buying into this whole thing, but I'm excited to watch the 2 games tonight and see how players play in a single elimination NBA game. The lines on tonight's game in the FanDuel Sportsbook is Boston at Indiana is a 5-point favorite, and the Kings at home against the Pelicans are a 4-point favorite. Tuesday night's games, Jazz will be flying. Milwaukee is at home against New York, a 5-point favorite, and the Lakers are a 1.5 favorite over Phoenix. I guess we're not sure who's going to play. FanDuel has some other fun things. Boston or Sacramento to win the in-season tournament is a plus 140. Boston or Phoenix is a plus 160. Knicks or Sacramento is a plus 290. You can the Celtics are the favorite at plus 330. Milwaukee 350. Then Sacramento 490. Sacramento the favorite out of the West right now, Boy, would their fan base drive down from Vegas. It's all over at the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On and the official America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. All right, bunch of things to touch on. I don't know that I said this, we're going to get to it, and I just looked at the clock. I don't know that we're going to get to it. We're not going to get to, I don't think we'll do there's only 2 games tonight, so it doesn't impact. We'll look at the Monday, kind of where everybody's standing, how everyone's, the Monday trending. We'll do that on Tuesday. Will already made an interesting comment about Simone Fontechhio, about why he's been so good defensively, and he's been super good defensively. I think we talked about the Desmond Bane and the Brandon Ingram defense. If you're an everydayer, you heard that, and appreciate you. He said it just because he plays so hard. He just uses maximum energy on every possession. And the impact has been that by playing maximum possession on every energy, that his teammates have to play maximum energy on every possession. And it's interesting talking to Chauncey Billups. Portland's pretty good defensively considering how bad offensively they are. That Kamara, Thibault, and Henderson have done the same thing in Portland. And that basically Fontechhio, and I think Yurtseven is similar to this, play so hard every possession that the rest of the guys have to follow. Yurtseven's just playing right and playing smart in every possession. The other thing that Will's talked about a huge amount is you've got to give, the game asks you to do certain things. For example, Will like to say, sometimes the game asks you to shoot 5 times in a row, and if you don't, you're doing a disservice. And sometimes the game asks you to pass 5 times in a row, and if you don't, you're doing a disservice, and it's not fun. And, one of the things the other night when they played, I think it was either Memphis or Minnesota, the team was top blocking our wings. They're over top playing, and we want to play off-ball screens. So teams get on top of our wings. And so this was in Minnesota, I think, when we had all the handoffs that got blown up. Well, if they're blowing that up, you can't get the handoffs. The right play is, instead of coming to go get the ball, is to sacrifice yourself and leave and bring your defender with you to clear out. That's no fun. That means you're not getting the ball. But Will's point is, like, every now and then the game asks you to do this, and you need to do it. And that's something that this team has not done. That's the unselfish type of play that we need to have. And then John Collins has those 2 handoffs that fall apart, and they end up being dunks the other way. And it's all a combination. Sure, John should have been more secure with the ball, but also the guy coming to him should have realized, I've got no chance here of getting to the ball, so I got to clear out. And then the next guy. There was a play the other night that was beautiful where one of our guys did clear out, might have been Simone, and then Colin back up behind him and was wide open for the layup. And it doesn't happen unless Simone makes that unselfish play. So that's a lot of what Will Hardy's talking about giving yourself up and reading the game. There's a bunch of great lines. If the game tells you to spin, it means to pass, right? Like, there's all these little things that the game will tell you what you're supposed to do, and then you can decide whether you're going to do it or not. And so a lot of what we're talking about here is when you're talking about unselfish play, is often off the ball, giving yourself up. And both Simone and Yurtseven do that very, very well. Yurtseven will set the pick. He'll roll. He'll get out. He'll space. He'll take a corner 3, which he may or may not want to do, but the game says for him to take it. He's made a few, but not very many. He does the right things. He does the right things, makes the right plays. And he's very, very solid. His play, I would guess, recently is a large part of why we are defensively. He just is fundamentally in the right place all the time. And then you add in Walker on the floor at the same time. We now have 2 good 7-foot defenders on the floor at all times. It's going to be interesting. I don't know how you take Fontechhio out of the starting lineup when Lowry comes back, and then I don't know who you're taking out of the starting lineup. And then if you're not taking Yurtseven or Kessler out of the rotation, but you've just dropped Lowry to the 4, minutes get hard to come by again. So this gets complicated again for Will Hardy here in a little bit when everyone starts to come back. But it's certainly been interesting to see, and it's a great credit. Yurtseven's defensive rating of guys who play is the best on the roster at a 108.6. Chris Dunn's is better. He's played a little less. So, and then 108.6. And, Our Jordan Clarkson's our worst. John Collins, then Keyonte George, Kelly Olynyk, and Lowry. So that switch to Yurtseven has made a big deal. Walker's in the middle of the pack, getting better, kind of on a regular basis. Taylor Hendricks got first extended time. And I had two takeaways. I knew you guys wanted this, so I thought we'd touch on this rather than the going around the league. One, I thought this is exactly what I saw was exactly why he's in the G League. He looks so much better than he had at any point in any practice in anything we've seen him do. The other one is he played 10 minutes straight at one point, which is exactly why you're in the G League, because then you can play 34 minutes a night. And then when you get into an NBA game, you can play 10 minutes straight. And you're not winded from not playing. So really, I actually thought this was kind of a testament to exactly what the Jazz are doing with him and how they're using him. And they pulled him on a day where he could have played a G League game, but knew he was going to be in the rotation. And I thought you saw every single reason why he was drafted ninth. He can run. He can jump. He's going to be a defensive player. He's going to probably be able to play a three if he can learn how to dribble. I think you saw every reason why you should be excited and hopeful and why he was drafted ninth in the league. And I think you saw exactly where the G League is of value to him. And I think you saw him improve greatly from what we've all seen from him in the past. He looked like he could hang a little bit in that game. And there have been times where I think it's been hard for him to know he can hang as well. So super, like that's what it's about. Where those minutes keep coming from when guys get healthy, I just talked about. I actually think it's with Simone taking rotation time and Yurtseven taking rotation time. This is getting super crowded. So I don't know how you jam 12 Taylor Hendricks minutes in on a regular basis, but it was great to see him do that. I think you probably look into it more 25, 30 games from now when we've suddenly played 40 games and see what he can do for the last 40, 45 after another 20, 25 G League games that have just clearly been massively valuable for him. All right, that is Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Monday editions, I love all of them. So Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 stream is where I'm going to send you right now. But if you want to on your own, Locked On NBA and Locked On NFL are two just amazing shows. Locked On NHL, if you're a hockey fan, does the same thing. I love Gil Martin's three. I catch all of them. Love it. It's one of the things I think we do best on the network is using our local experts on the story so that you get something better than the kind of 30,000 foot national perspective. You actually get the local host telling you what's truly going on in each of their markets. That's at Locked On NFL, Locked On NBA, and Locked On NHL. Have a great day. Thank you very much for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. Here you go. We're sending you over to the first ever 24/7 YouTube national sports stream, Locked On Sports Today. Enjoy.